TOA and Fit Body Forever, Fit Body Bootcamp communities. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Robert Linkul with trainingtheolderadult.com. Good to see you all. Hope you're doing great. I've got a treat for you today. This
think you can overstate the importance.
A pretty awesome webinar, podcast that Dr. Peter Attia did, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's an hour and 45 minutes, so it's long, okay? And so I'm going to break this up into a couple of chapter videos for us to go through, but I recorded probably 12, maybe 15 talking points that he put in here that are just fantastic, and I cannot express enough how happy I am that a medical doctor is talking about this. And I don't know if anyone is more popular than Dr. Attia, and so he is the one that I want to really feature and highlight as our driving force. So let's get into it. Here's topic number one. This is how the whole thing starts.
Of strength training. I just don't think there's anybody out there who shouldn't be lifting weights. I can't think of a case. I mean, unless you're decidedly saying, I don't want to live the longest, healthiest life I can. If that's the case, then by all means don't lift weights. But if you're in the camp that says, I want to maximize how well I can live and maybe even how long I can live, what should I do? Then you have to be lifting weights regardless of age, regardless of sex, regardless of injury. You have to work around all of those things.
Okay, could not be more accurate in understanding the aging body. Like, we'll say this all the time, like, can you think of any particular group of people that need the valued benefits of resistance training? If you just bullet point all the really good things about resistance training and then say who needs this the most: muscle mass development to hold their posture and help them perform, bone density to hold up their structure, keep them with good, healthy bones for longevity, increased energy, improved cognition, increased coordination and strength and balance and fall prevention. And then all the way down the slew of other health benefits, from increased cardiovascular health, improved from degeneration of disc and bone disease, all the way down to neuropathies and arthritis and any other age-related or any other age-related disease. As opposed to taking some type of drugs that are made for that, you can implement resistance training and improve your quality of life to a pretty high level without having to default to medical intervention for the most part, okay? I'm not saying don't take medical drugs if you need them for heart, blood pressure, et cetera, whatever it is, right, or whatever disease. My point is you can improve your quality of life simply by getting yourself stronger. And right here, we have our medical doctor leading the way, saying exact same thing. Nobody else is more valued in receiving the benefit of this than the aging population. Absolutely love it.
We're going to talk about, but we have to be able to avoid that situation. So I'll give you one example. People have long heard me talk about the idea that once you reach a certain age, like 65, and if you fall and break your hip or femur, the probability of death is really high. I mean, it's, on the order of 15 to 30%. What often gets forgotten there, even though I try to always mention it, is of the survivors, meaning the people who don't go on to die within 12 months, 50% of those people never reach the same level of function again. So that's an example of why these curves are probably not smooth, but in fact have these.
Okay, so 15 to 30% of the people over age 50, I think he said 50, maybe he's 65, maybe he was 65, that fall and either break their back, their hip, or their leg, so some type of mid to lower body extremity. Within 12 months, statistically, 15 to 30% of them will die from that injury. These are significant injuries, and there's more and more statistical evidence to support that. But as he's suggesting, is not really discussed all that much, is 50% of those individuals won't get back to the regular ability they had prior to. So that's leaving you with, 15 to 30% of the people that can or do get better. And that's just not a huge percentage of folks. Like, that's That's the damage that is done with falls. He's going to show us some more statistical. I left all this in the order in which he discusses it in the podcast, but he's going to show us some statistical information here in just a moment that is pretty alarming and shows by the year 2030, we are really headed in the wrong direction. But at the core of all of this, that will really help people reduce their fall risk is what? Getting strong. Okay, and very simple, very minimal efforts and inputs can improve quality of life for this. Very, very minimal.
To challenge myself, and by saying this of myself, that what I'm really saying is everybody should be thinking about this, especially at this age, in terms of circuit training, exercises where you're doing more than one thing at a time. So an example of this might be that if someone were just starting out, I would want to see them doing more body weight exercises that are slightly more complex movements. So
I'm not a huge fan of that. And he continues on here to talk more about machines, but let's just address the body weight thing here for a minute. Body weight's really difficult. Body weight work is not the basics. That's not where beginners should start. They should start on selectorized machines, in my opinion, or really light free weights. If they have a good, I would say, neuromuscular facilitation, pattern recognition, meaning they can coordinate and move their bodies well. If you can't do that well, go to the machines. Learn on the machines. That's the best place to be. Because if you think about it, think about how difficult push-ups are. Think about how difficult lunges are. Think about how difficult bear crawling is to get to extremes. Handstand push-ups, pull-ups, L pull-ups, walking on your hands, inverted tabletop crab walk. What else is really difficult about body weight? I mean, just moving your body, inverted rows, like just moving your body around is rather difficult, and most people can't. Especially if I'm older, I'm deconditioned, I have arthritis, I had limited joint mobility and range of motion. I need something that's going to be guided, that's going to take me through that range of motion, that's going to help me build the strength that I need to eventually manipulate my body weight well. But right now, my own body weight's too heavy for me. And that's why if you take somebody who's never trained before and you're like, get down on the ground and do a push-up, they can't. They can't even get close to doing a good push-up. You're like, okay, well, let's go on your knees. Still can't do that. Okay, let's go up onto the Smith machine. We'll do it on there. They can't do that either. Like it's too difficult of a movement pattern. It's too difficult to hold yourself in those positions. So what do? Well, let's go to the machines then. I think that's a great place to start.
For example, a step back lunge is an important thing for them to be doing, even if it's just body weight, versus just working on a leg press with heavy weight. So again, there's a time and a place for using machines, and I think we'll talk about why I think machines are a very good thing for someone starting out. Because
yeah, and I agree with that. I like the compound movement patterns. He's talking about multi-joint, multiple muscles being used at once, and kind of replicating life movements. And so lunges are something that we do, especially getting up and down off the floor or just taking long gated steps that we will do in real life. Advanced levels of lunging are your variations of ascending steps, descending steps, etc. So things where you're splitting your feet basically and manipulating through the day. As simple as walking, as advanced as stair climbing or up and down off the floor. So I love that, absolutely.
You want them to be able to look back in 3 months. You have to come up with something that is realistic for a person, because the most important goal when you're returning someone to exercise or when you're starting someone from scratch is you want them to be able to look back in 3 months and view this as a positive experience. Nothing else matters if that is not true. So, if in 3 months you've improved them by every objective metric and they hated it.
Yeah, that's the discussion here is when you're introducing somebody into resistance training, they're probably coming from an experience in the past. Okay, let's say this is a 65-year-old male, first time ever lifting weights, or first time really getting serious about it. Probably coming from experiences in the past that he did not enjoy. That's why resistance training has not been part of his regular life. Not everybody enjoys the discomforts and the challenge of pushing in the weight room. Not everybody likes that. So you need to find different ways to push yourself to get the benefit of resistance training. That's where the simplicities of changing the implements that you use. I could use barbells, I could use dumbbells, I could use kettlebells, I could do pulleys and machines, I could do classes, I can do one-on-one, I can do semi-private. There's all kinds of different variables of how you implement resistance training and what tools you use to that to make it more intriguing, make it more interesting, make it more fun for an individual, where ultimately it comes down to, are they challenging themselves with weight in their hand, and is that load what we would consider an overload, right? Not overload like it's too much for them to handle, it's just more than their body is traditionally used to or regularly used to using. That's where they're going to benefit from the change of that overload. So if I do that with a kettlebell or a dumbbell or a barbell or whatever implement that I use, does it matter? Does it matter if I'm on a machine or using a kettlebell? It doesn't really matter in the beginning, but as you progress, yeah, there's going to be greater benefit in manipulating free weights over machines. There's going to be greater benefit in manipulating heavier loads versus lighter loads, but there are also great benefits in unilateral lifts versus a bilateral lift, one arm or one leg at a time versus both arms or both legs at a time. So there's lots of values and challenges and different ways to train that makes it fun for people, or engaging, or at least more manageable, more tolerable if they don't find this to be something they really love and look forward to, like all of us. Like there's a lot of folks that, myself included, we wake up and we skip down the hallway and we enjoy the idea of putting on our shoes and warming up and getting our lift in. Love that. I look forward to it every day. Not everybody's like that. So that's what he's saying here is, for us to really implement this with somebody and have them go, I'm going to keep to it. I'm going to do this for 3 months. And if I just commit to that for 3 months, not only, number one, will I see before and after benefits, but I want to say I enjoyed that. It wasn't miserable.
Want to live a long life, you better have a high VO2 max. This figure says if you want to live a good life, you better have a high VO2 max, because this gives you a very clear all-in-one view of what actually happens as your VO2 max declines. You lose capacity.
Yeah, the suggestion of the longevity of life in connection to VO2 max is really well documented. The same correlation goes with muscle mass. The lower the muscle mass, the lower your VO2, the lesser quality of life you're going to have, the shorter quantity of life you're going to have, and the less ability you're going to have. That's all pretty well documented and showcased. Where just the opposite is true. The more muscle mass I have, the higher my VO2 max, and the combination of those two, the higher my abilities and capabilities will be to live a higher quality of life as I age. Now, when we look at those percentages and like where you want to be, it's per decade basically of life. And some of the research down to every 5 years, but you can do by male or female, and then by age categories you go up and say, okay, here's your VO2 max, here's your muscle mass percentage of lean body tissue for your body. Here are the percentages, and I'm in the 50 percentile, the 70 percentile, or I'm in the top 10 percentile, whatever it might be. You want to at least be in the upper half for all of those, if not higher, to really ensure and give yourself the best opportunity to age well, but to increase and maintain the highest quality of life, I guess I would say.
Personally, and I don't think there's a right answer here, and if there is, I'm sure someone will comment. I like to push frequency before I push duration. So I'd almost rather go from 2 to 3 to 4 sessions at 30 minutes before we start going to 45. But eventually I'm going to want the sessions to be at least 45 minutes each.
So he's asking him suggestions on somebody coming into the program for the first time. Would you ask them to just lift like twice a week, but try to lift heavier and to really progress with load and volume? Or would it be more beneficial for them to train more days during the week and maybe not worry so much about progressing so fast in load? And so his suggestion is I would rather have people lift more often, multiple days throughout the week, maybe even less of a stimulus. So let's say instead of twice a week for 45 minutes, which gives you 90 minutes total, do 4 days a week for 30 minutes. And now we've got 2 hours worth of 120 minutes versus 90, but it's more manageable 30-minute blocks that you can go across. Do a Monday, Tuesday, break Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then your weekends are off. Maybe you fill in those other days with walking or rucking or have a little combination of both. You know what I mean? Some days where you lift and ruck together. Some of my best workout days are days where I do my 90-minute ruck and I lift a little bit right afterwards. Those are some of my favorite days, and I sleep those nights extra good. I typically sleep pretty good, but those nights I sleep extra good because I've pushed myself. I've given myself a reason to be tired. So I think the more frequency, I agree with them in terms of I think it'll have a better return for your body. You'll have more reasons throughout the week to sleep more efficiently because you put out regular energy on a more consistent basis. And if you could fill in those other days with physical activity that's not resistance training, now every day you're giving a physical exertion, literally every day. Do you want days where you have off days and you just sit around and do absolutely nothing? Every once in a while, okay, I can tell you this, like even yesterday, okay, yesterday was Sunday, I did a 90-minute ruck, then I worked in the yard, cut our grass. That took me 45 minutes, my ruck is 90 minutes. So I'm 2 hours plus into physical exertion. Then I sat on the couch and we watched Young Sheldon for 7 hours. Just binged it. Our kids love the show. We love the show. We just hung out. We've been traveling and at the beach and boating and just having a blast for the last 4 days. And we're all sunburned and we're all exhausted and tired. And so we got our stuff done and then we just laid there. But I slept great and I had a big physical exertion earlier in the day. But I still took the rest of that day, 8 hours really of my life before we went to bed, just laid around, did nothing. So there's nothing wrong with having days where you like literally just lay around and do nothing. But should we still go do some type of physical exertion? Absolutely. It could just be, let's go get a 30-minute walk in, just loosen up the body. But you should literally do something physical for 30 minutes every single day, 7 days a week. 7 days a week. That is what I'm prescribing. To everybody out there, do something physical every day for 30 minutes. Every day of the week, I think you'd have huge benefits from that.
Study that looked at people in their late 70s and early 80s and people in their 20s. And it, at the outset, measured 3-rep max for leg extension and then put them on a 6-week resistance training program. And the people in their late 70s and early 80s had a 78% increase in their strength. Which is almost identical to the 84% increase that was found in the younger individuals. Again, it's important to understand that, yes, these people were significantly different in the absolute strength that they had. The average leg extension in the people who were in their late 70s and early 80s was only 22 kilograms versus 178 kilograms for the young participants.
220 to 250.
But nevertheless, this is an important point that is everybody has the capacity to improve, and therefore everybody needs to.
Okay. He's talking about a study where they tested just lower body strength in 20 to 30-year-olds and in 70 to 80-year-olds. And they showed just a lower body strength training routine. I think it was 3 days a week, something like that. And they wanted to see their 3-rep maximum. And they were doing quad extension as their testing protocol. So the older group had a 73 to 75% increase, and the younger group had a 80 to 85%, something like that, right? Whatever those numbers were. Point is both of them well over 70% increase in overall strength outputs. That's measurable per capita of their testing group, meaning the protocol improved everyone, no matter their age. But what's the overall output? Like, is he suggesting that resistance training at 80 will equal the same strength outputs as those in their 20s? No, the ones in their 20s, and I think what he said was between 100 and 70 kilos. So he kind of inverted those numbers, I think, because there aren't a lot of people that can quad extend 170 kilos, which is it's 350 to 380 pounds. Like, I think it was between 70 and 100, which is more like 155 to 220 pounds, somewhere in there. I think that's more accurate for the younger group, where the older group, 22 kilos, or excuse me, 40 to 42 kilos, that's like, 88 to 95 pounds, something like that. So the other group was doing literally double. The younger group was literally double the amount of weight, if not more. So overall will resistance training benefit you at any age? Will it help you if you've deconditioned, never trained? You're like, I'm 80, I'm going to start resistance training for the first time ever. Yeah, you're going to see great strength gains. Absolutely, 70%, if not more. But would it be better had you started at 50 to set yourself up? He has a great analogy, talks about deposits in a bank for retirement. If you start retirement putting in incomes into the bank in your 20s, man, your retirement at 70 is going to be amazing, because you've got 50 years of investments and collecting interest and et cetera, et cetera. But if you wait until you're 50, now you've got to be more aggressive. You've got to take more risk. You've got to take more opportunity to build up, to try to get to that same number at 70 when you retire. Well, now I've only got 20 years compared to 50, right? Either way, you can end up in the same place, but one road is much less risky, much more progressive, and give you a greater opportunity to be really successful with minimal risk. That's the one that we want. So the sooner you start this, the better.
One of the things that Andy said that has always stuck with me, and I think it's just such a great way to think about this, he almost described it as a hallmark of aging, is the atrophy of the type 2 muscle fibers. So again, you have type 1 fibers, you have type 2 fibers. The type 2 fibers are the glycolytic fibers. They are the much more powerful fibers. They have more contractile force. They're the ones that are responsible for power, not just muscle size, and not even just strength, and clearly not muscular endurance. And these are the things that basically peak when we're in our 20s. And so, every day I'm sort of thinking about, what am I doing to preserve them and minimize their loss? And again, a study we'll link to demonstrates that type 2 muscle fiber cross-sectional area was increased by 27% in men aged 60 to 73 with 13 weeks of resistance training. Now, again, you have to train relatively heavy for your level of strength. You have to push to make those results happen. But again...
Okay. So he's suggesting here that as you age, they're generally speaking, there are two types of muscle fibers. There's more, but there's type 1, type 2. Type 2 muscle fibers are very dynamic, explosive, more reactive, more power-based. They help you move quickly like a ninja, okay? Then you have your type 1 fibers, and then both of those can be broken down into A's and B's, and there's all kinds of extra little bits of that go down. But let's just speak in clear terms of A's, 1 and 2. Type 1 fibers are slower, more muscular endurance. So when you're a really good endurance runner, typically your type 1 fibers are really well developed, and it's like, I can work at a pretty moderate 60 to 70% effort for a long time, okay? It's very oxidative. You're very aerobic. And on the other end of things, you're very glycolytic. You're very quick and dynamic and fast and anaerobic and explosive, but that only lasts for 5 to 12 seconds. And then that kind of starts to peter out into that middle ground. And then after about 30, you're pretty much all aerobic as you go from there. So those two types, right? If you don't, what do we do pretty much all of our life? We kind of walk at a slow, moderate rate. So which of those two fibers do you think are going to be maintained longer? The type 1s, right? Your slower ones, because you practice that on a regular basis. I walk around slowly. I kind of move my arms and my body around slowly. I kind of do everything slowly. So my ability to move slow will always be there. But will my ability to move fast, to be dynamic, to be explosive, to jump, to switch my feet really quickly, to move like a ninja, will those actions, will those be regular skilled, regular actions that you can perform at 20? Will you be able to do that at 30? Probably. At 40? Probably not as good, but you could still do it. At 50? No. You're going to see a drastic change in there, and that's usually where injuries occur. because our 40 to 50-year-old men, we all start to go through our midlife crisis and we go, I'm going to get back into shape. I'm going to join the men's basketball rec league and I'm just going to get out there. I used to play varsity basketball. I could have gone pro if it wasn't for my bum elbow. And, I just never got my chance. And so you get out to the rec sport court and, 4 minutes in after running down the court, there goes your Achilles or your ACL or your lower back or whatever it is, because you haven't done anything explosive. You haven't done lateral dynamic movements in 20 plus years. So that's where oh, hey, yeah, at 50, 45, 50, I can still go do those things. I just need to train my body to be ready to do them, or else things are going to blow apart. And those are all type 2 fibers. That's where we're going, is that you need to train your type 2 fibers, your fast power-based movement patterns. That's why in our programming, we have like a regular strength week, and then we have an eccentric week, and then we have a high intensity velocity week, that's power week, and then we have a high intensity interval training, more endurance. And in each week, we have little bits of each one of those things. So you're always training a little bit of endurance, we're always training a little bit of strength, we're always training a little bit of power, and we're always training a little bit of cross-sectional, multi-joint, multi-movement patterns. So you get a little bit of everything you need as you age, and we're moving in all these directions and all these different velocities and tempos. So we should be able to do pretty good stuff, right? I will, hopefully I don't jinx myself in this as we wrap up part 1. And I just went and played pickleball for about an hour and a half with Keegan and 2 other couples. We played in a little tournament. And I was pleasantly surprised, not with my pickleball skills, but with my ability to move around the court. Mind you, I have had back surgery. I've had 3 hip replacements. I've had 7 surgeries in total in my hips. 14 surgeries total on my body. So the fact that I was able to move around, look fairly athletic, move forward and back, side to side, dynamic, move quickly, not even really think about it, and the next day just go, oh, my hips are a tiny bit sore, a little achy, but other than that, I was fine. I was good, knock on wood. My Achilles were okay, my knees were okay, my lower back was okay, my shoulders were okay, my elbows were okay. I was really happy with that because I don't play pickleball weekly. I haven't conditioned my body to do that on a regular basis, but the training style that I do does. I do train in multiple directions. I do train slow, eccentric, muscle-based, muscular-based hypertrophy lifts. And then on the other side, I do power, dynamic drop step lunges, split squats, dynamic lunges, rear leg elevated split squats, snatches, cleans, push presses, pop squats, right? We do things where we're leaving the ground, moving multiple directions, being explosive. So those are the things that are going to help me as I'm 43 now, start getting closer to 50 and then into my 60s, to be able to keep doing some stuff like that and not get hurt. Again, knock on wood. So all of this, type 2 fibers, very, very important, okay? Very important to keep your body moving dynamically. Why? Tie that all the way back to like the second clip where we talked about falls and how severe those falls are, how detrimental it is if you fall. Well, the number one reason people fall down is because their type 2 fibers are not developed and they cannot move and coordinate and dynamically react like they used to, and thus ends up in them falling down, getting hurt. And then the percentage of recovery and or mortality. All right, gang. Well, that's part 1. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm going to do a whole second one. I didn't want to do an hour straight on this, but I'm going to do a second chapter on this, and love to hear your feedback. Head over. I got the link in the show notes down below in the description that'll take you to Dr. Attia's whole video so you can hear this whole thing in its entirety. But man, if I am a paying customer to his content. This is the free one you get on YouTube, but I pay for his content. Him, Dr. Mike Israetel, the only 2 people that I pay, I go beyond their paywalls to be able to access their continued education content, because I love the materials they put out, the research supporting it, and the show notes that give you great, great resources to be able to see where they got this information and to look deeper into it if you would like to do so. So I highly encourage you become a member of Dr. Peter Attia's online resources and his membership on his website, and Dr. Mike Israetel as well. All right, everybody, we'll talk to you soon. I hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.